Well, welcome to Awesome Earth-Kind Energy, where we take the incredible forces of nature, the four elements, the power of the air, the water, the earth, and the sun. We combine it with the fifth element. That's you and me. All people across all humanity, the people of Earth or Earth-Kind. And today it is my pleasure to introduce my good friend, Scott Sklar.
Ta-da!
So, Scott lives in a 3,800 square foot solar home on 1/8 of an acre in Arlington, Virginia, and he pays $34 a month for his electricity, his heat, his air conditioning, and his hot water, thanks to the awesome geothermal heating and cooling, solar hot water, and solar photovoltaic battery systems that he has in his place. He also has an 1,800 square foot, two-story, zero-energy Virginia office building with two-story building with PV roof shingles, a small wind turbine, and a hydrogen fuel cell, all tied to a web-enabled battery bank so he controls it, and he pays a whopping $39 a month for all the heat, all the air conditioning, all the hot water, and all the energy for that building. Scott is using an incredible amount of his career in doing this for his home, for his office. He helps other people do it across the planet. He began his career as an aide for 10 years to Senator Jacob Javits out of New York. He co-founded the Congressional Solar Caucus, and then as the executive, he was the executive director of the Solar Energy Industries and the National Bioenergy Industries Associations, the director of the National Center for Appropriate Technologies. He's currently the president of the Stellar Group since 2000. He's done renewable energy projects on every continent, including Antarctica, and he represents commercial, industrial, institutional, military, and local government entities across the world, well, mostly across the United States, I should say. He's the energy director of the George Washington University Environment and Energy Management Center and a professor for 3 unique interdisciplinary courses on sustainable energy. He serves on the boards or plays key roles in the Solar Foundation, the Business Council for Sustainable Energy, the Renewable Energy Policy Project, and the Sustainable Energy Coalition. Scott, it is a pleasure having you on this show.
Me too. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you so much for coming. All right, so we get to know you a little bit. Tell us something about your personal life that nobody else really knows, if you'd be so kind.
Well, I promote respect of bearded people, so we get the respect we need. In fact, in Arlington, Virginia, we have several places that give bearded customer discounts to honor that respect. I have 2 dogs, Elvis and Cody, and 2 conure parrots, Geezer and Gilda. So there we go.
That is awesome. Thank you, Scott. So I asked you for a quantum quote to share with the audience, and your quote was, "The extraction, conversion, and use of energy is the the extraction, conversion, and use of energy is the single largest cause of air and water pollution, single largest consumer of clean energy, single largest
Clean water."
Oh, yes, you're right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
My quote, I know that.
Do you want to say it yourself? That'd be
No, go for it. Go for it.
All right,
I want you to say
there we go.
something.
We're going to say it again. It's great that we can edit. It's a really good
All
thing.
right, that's wonderful.
Okay. It's good. The extraction, conversion, and use of energy is the single largest cause of air and water pollution, the single largest consumer of clean water, the single largest funnel of resources supporting terrorism, and the single largest emitter of greenhouse gases. Time for that to stop. Great quote, Scott. So if you would, tell us a little bit about your career and share one unique value SuperNova that you think everybody should keep in their mind and take away from this show.
Well, I've been one of the earlier group of clean energy advocates in the United States coming out of the 1970s oil embargo. And during that period, I had a career working in the U.S. Senate for Senator Jacob Javits of New York. And in 1974, many of us became instant energy staff. They didn't have them naturally on Capitol Hill. And because remember, oil and gas were really discovered here in the United States, Titusville, Pennsylvania. Didn't know what to do with it at the time. And nuclear also discovered here. And coal wasn't discovered here, but we had the world's largest railroads and used most of it. So we were an energy-driven economy, low cost, and the embargo in the 70s was the first time we ever had an energy shortage, anybody paid any attention. And my epiphany in it, not knowing anything about it, was we had a lot of experts that claimed they knew energy, but actually they didn't know energy. They knew a very little sliver of their field that they were in, coal or oil or gas or nuclear or utility power, the grid. And as I had to deal with that from a policy perspective, as I started building up my own expertise, I also realized that we're teaching and educating wrongly on energy. That if you look at energy from a single window, a single point of view, and not discover deal with the other impacts, like clean water. So we had a presidential candidate that said, hey, we need 98 nuclear power plants. And Scott Sklar met with him and said, that's impossible. Senator McCain, who's passed away. I said, they use the most clean water of any kind of electric generation. We don't have that clean water. In fact, we have less clean water. Only 3% of the Earth's water is clean. Half of that is tied up in places we can't use it. And we have clean water shortages in the entire Western United States. And it's getting worse, according to the scientists. So you have to look at technology. If you want to deal and make sure we have clean water, you can't have clean water reliant energy technologies, as an example. So not being able to understand energy security and resiliency, needs for water, issues regarding land use, obviously environment in terms of the waste that comes out of all these traditional technologies and how it impacts a lot of other health issues in the United States. If you don't care about that stuff and just look at it technically, you come to one conclusion. If you look at it holistically, you obviously come to the other conclusion. And high value energy efficiency, maximizing it, using every kind of renewable energy that you have, and intelligent use of energy storage, sensors, and controls have to be part of the future. And that's exactly actually what's happening globally, but it's a lot slower than it should have been. I'm not picking you up again.
Sorry, that was my fault.
Okay.
I turned myself down so that I wouldn't bother you. Sorry about that. So there's one thing that you'd like people to know and take away from, from this today. What would it be?
Well, I think we are on a path that's following two other paths that already happened. That also there was a lot of skepticism on. The first path was a wireless distributed communication system. We know that as cellular phones. By the way, it was ridiculed and thought as ridiculous when it was happening. And so I want you to think about something and we're using fiber optics, satellites, and cell towers, and they interact seamlessly. But if a cell tower goes down, which happens every week in the in the world, the communication system doesn't fail. It's a self-healing grid. The other cell towers surrounding it triangulate and take over for the missing cell tower. And a decade later, we had the internet, and we have data centers all over the world. And when data centers go down all over the world every single month, does the internet come down? No. We have a same seamless grid. And the data center, when it goes down, the other data centers sense that automatically and compensate for it. So what we're trying to do with energy is, electricity in particular, is follow that path. And so what we're doing is we now have centralized power plants we're moving to generation along transmission lines, substations, distribution lines, and at the end user, primarily with renewables, and energy, and then dot all of that in between with energy storage of all types, pumped hydro, compressed air and liquids, flywheels, batteries, even hydrogen. And so we'll have a capacity that when a power line goes down or a transformer goes out, we will not be dark. We will be operating. We will follow the other two seamless grids. So that's the end game. And we are moving in that direction through fits and starts, starting with the same skepticism, not so much anymore, except that the powers that be who have the old way obviously don't want to change, as did Ma Bell not want to change from copper wire, and as the doubting Thomases of the internet didn't think about this communication system. So that's really what's happening. And we are in this technology and capital formation and regulation transformation to make all of that happen.
Yeah, it's incredible. I completely agree with you. I mean, just like the smartphones we all carry around with us 10, 15 years ago, they were multi-million-dollar supercomputers that you couldn't fit into a room. Now the systems have gotten much more compact and distributed, and I think you're exactly right, man. That's
right, and the smartphones that you and I carry around are 100 times more powerful than the Pentagon had 30 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, in a room. So yes, it's exactly right. So, we have, and what we also have seen is, the smartphone started just for communication, but then it had other attributes to it. Then it, of course, was able to interact with the internet and get data. It was able to provide entertainment. It's able to provide GPS. It's able to provide photography and pictures. So, and then, of course, the apps and other entertainment and other kinds of communications. So you have these interreliant devices. And there's a lot of talk by the smart building folks that the buildings of the future will have a little data center in them, connected wirelessly automatically, with and interface with your smartphone and your energy system on the building, and your building will be just what happened to the smartphone. Have all these different technologies, and you'll have a wireless security system and all these entertainment systems and all these other things that you can pay for and add layers on, so you can not have to worry about anything. So you won't need to buy your Alexa separately and your Apple TV separately and all this other stuff. It will be part of this module that's in your building, and you can just you can buy what services you want as part of the package.
Fantastic. Well, you've had a long and illustrious career, and I'm sure there's been a couple of ups and downs.
Well, no, mostly I've been ridiculed through most of my career. It's only been in the last 5 years of the 40 that the things I said that were laughed at are now happening. But most of the career was actually quite derisive.
All right, so tell us your worst clean energy moment.
Well, I've had several of them. Actually, this is not a worst moment, but it's an illustrative moment. So a couple of years after the oil embargo, and now I became I was a military aide that moved into energy. Now I was a full-fledged energy aide for a very powerful senator. And I would go in every year to the head of the chief of staff of the Appropriations Committee, worked for a very powerful senator. From Louisiana, both shared the Energy Committee and the Appropriations Committee, and Bennett Johnston, really well known, and an oil Democrat, basically. And this chief of staff had worked there 35 years. Everybody's afraid of him. And I'm in there, and this is the second year, and you meet once a year, and you go, this is what we want, and I'm doing my little spiel, and the guy's just staring at me, and everybody's afraid of this guy, and I'm just doing my little renewable energy rap, what we need for solar and wind and geothermal and biomass and marine and hydro and energy efficiency. I'm doing all this little stuff. And the guy gets up from around his desk and asks me to stand up. And he's 30 years older than I am. And he puts his hands on my shoulder and he goes, Scott, I want you to know I really like you. And I'm being very serious. I really like you. And he goes, and Scott, I love your enthusiasm. And Scott, I will do many of the things you ask today. But as a friend, I need to tell you something. There will never, ever be wind farms or fields of photovoltaics. And I'm going, but, and he goes, just Scott, I'm telling you as a friend, there will never be any of these things. Your entire combined industries are like $200 million against the fossil and nuclear industries, which are $10 trillion. You're 15 times more expensive. And you're like 200 million, and of the $200 million, like 180 million are hydro, and 20 million are everything else. And you hardly employ anything, and it's ridiculous. It's never going to happen. And I'm going, well, no. And of course, that was before cell phones and the internet, of course. So, and my friends in those respective industries told me they had the same astonishment and credulity of the political and financial system on their industries. It takes time. So I was ridiculed most of the career. You know, I would get up there and they would just snicker or laugh, you know, and of course I was an ardent believer. And I never thought I'd be alive actually to see that. And as of 2016, more electric power came on the world's grid, new power, than any other fuel from renewables every single year since 2016. So, you know, April of this year in the United States, almost all, I think close to 100%, according to the Energy Information Administration, of all new electric power came on the U.S. grid came from renewables. So, you know, that was heresy talking about it in the 1970s, or for that matter, 1980s. So the point being is, you know, technology changes, and but I, you know, was not believed for most of my career.
And that was your worst moment, was when that guy told you that?
Well, it was a very powerful person saying, you know, your vision of the future is ridiculous. Just, you know, so. No, I had major, when I ran the Solar Industries Association, we lost the solar tax credits, which was horrible. And, you know, 90,000 people lost their jobs in a month. So I've had a lot of setbacks in the ups and downs of fighting public policy and dealing with certain, you know, different projects and capital projects. So sure.
Thanks. So take us to the moment of one incredible aha, I got it, and tell us the story about it.
That's pretty good. Well, there are lots of those, actually. I really think when I was running the Solar Industries Association, I called the heads of the photovoltaic manufacturers, which, by the way, most of them produce solar panels for space, for satellites, right? And they are trying with federal funding, with the Department of Energy and some other agencies, move to the, you know, on-ground markets. And they were all sort of pushing to go in the utility market. Now, I have a degree in international affairs, and I call them into they fly to Washington, and I go, you know, you're all spending a lot of money to compete in the utility grid markets in the United States of America, of which you cost 22 times more. But in fact, if you focused on the third world market that either is not connected to the utility, or when it is, the utility is only operating about 20% of the time. And when it does operate, it has surges and blows out everything. Or they operate on diesel fuel, which is 20 times more than photovoltaics, and they have to pay 3 levels of bribes on the diesel engines, and the diesel engines need to be repaired, which they hardly can't do. So why don't you focus on a market you're competitive on? And they looked at me and said, you're an idiot. And why I'm an idiot is that those are poor people, and the utilities are rich people. And I go, yeah, but the utilities that are rich people, you're more expensive, so they don't want you. The poor people, you're less expensive. And they're paying money for kerosene or diesel fuel or their grids now. And it's not optimal. So why don't you do that? And a small percentage of them moved to that strategy and did extremely well. It's a very good market. And by the way, I want to remind you, since I do a lot of work overseas, that actually the poorest countries and the poorest consumers are the most reliable consumers, because the first time you can get your cell phones charged or your house or office lit or your water pumped and purified, are you going to give that up? Are you not going to pay and then, and have them turn it off? No, you're going to do everything you can to have dignity of life of what the rest of the industrialized world has. So obviously the solar and the small wind and of course batteries and micro hydro and biogas are booming because they are economic, they are much more reliable, they are lower cost, and they don't have waste issues to worry about. So it's the dynamic has changed. It's taken a long time to do that. And we had to kick the international institutions like the World Bank and the United Nations and the regional development banks like the Inter-American Development Bank and African Development Bank and Asian Development Bank. So we've had lots of issues to overcome, but we are there. We are overcoming that. And the changeover is pretty profound.
Fantastic. Thanks. All right. We're going to go into what other people call the lightning round, but here on Awesome Earthkind, we call the pulsar round. This is the point. Yes, exactly.
This is the round. Do I need to call my my attorney here just to make sure I get my health care covered?
Well, no, but
okay.
You do need to produce short, succinct, amazing, and mind-blowing answers, which I know you have in you.
I can do short answers. I don't have mind-blowing.
Short, succinct, amazing, and mind-blowing, pulsar enlightening answers to these questions.
All right. This is heavy, but I'll try my best.
You will do great. What's the best advice you've ever received?
The best advice I have ever received is don't take things personally. And many of us who are parents, I have a daughter, I've learned how to do that. And so just because somebody doesn't agree with you or believe you doesn't mean you can't win them. You just have to not take it personally, be thoughtful about what they're looking for, and then try to express it or meet their concerns. And don't be snooty about it.
Excellent. Share one of your personal habits that contributes to your success.
I am extremely stubborn, and I have an extreme perseverance. So people will say no for years, and I keep on it, and finally they'll go, all right, I'll do one, just one. I'm not going to do more, but I'll put one of your stupid solar wind battery systems somewhere, or a little microgrid. I'll do that, but just shut up. and then usually, and I don't bother them. And then a year later, they'll call me and go, I hate to tell you this. I really do, because it will just swell your head, over improportionately. But it actually works. Okay, let's do some more. So the issue is that, patience is important. And don't take no for an answer, and just keep working it until you're so annoying that I do have this important line. You want something pithy? There is nothing like a fine wine, W-H-I-N-E.
Nothing like a fine wine to get what you ultimately want. My dog knows that one. My dog knows it really well.
That's why anybody who has kids knows this, but we don't think that way. There it is.
All right. What's one good internet source that you like people that you think people should listen to, that you want to share it with folks? One good internet source.
There are many, obviously, great internet sources. On environment, I think the World Resource Institute, WRI, on global sustainability, the UN environmental program, UNEP or UNDP, the UN Development Program, probably pretty excellent. On international renewable energy, IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency, that's out of Paris, and that's formed by the G11, is very good. So the Union of Concerned Scientists are top-notch, www.ucs.org, ucsusa.org. So there are tons of them, and I give my students a whole list of those and 36 studies that show that if you use the entire technology we have today and the entire portfolio of renewable energy, high-value energy efficiency, energy storage, you can meet all the world's energy needs economically today.
And for people, average consumers out there who want to do something, are concerned about the environment, they're concerned about what's happening with climate change, but they don't have a lot of money, they're squeezed now, especially with this economy. Is there any sort of good resource that you would recommend that they take a look at so that they can reduce?
Well, there are several of those too. If you're interested in clean energy, energy efficiency, and solar water heating, photovoltaics, those kind of things for your home or small business, the American Solar Energy Society has a magazine called Solar Today and a website, www.ases.org. They're the oldest solar organization in the United States, but for all renewables. And the Solar Energy Industries Association have state and regional chapters. So if you want to find installers that are under some ethics guidelines, like they're not being pursued by the state attorney general and the IRS, and they have signed some statements, and they pay to be in an association, which shows they have some inclination to be a member of good standing in the solar family. Using the SEIA state and regional chapters are a good resource for getting folks in there, because in the end, you want to, if you're solar or water heating or photovoltaics or geothermal heat pumps or whatever in your building, you want a couple of estimates. You don't want the first one. And by the way, and you want them to give you some referrals with phone numbers and emails, and so you can call them, and the owners have not be the same last name of the owners of the solar or geothermal company or energy audit company. And you ask them, did it go in on time? Did it go in on cost? Are you happy with it? What would you change if you had to do it again? And so you do some comparative shopping.
Good consumer. Cool. What book would you recommend to people and why?
Well, again, there are some wonderful choices depending on where you're coming from. And, for me, I think that any of the Amory Lovin's books, and he has several of them, Electricity Without Fire and Brittle Power, which is the first book on how brittle our grid is, are probably the more thoughtful, fact-filled understanding of energy than you ever can know. So I think from that point of view, I would say any of the Amory Lovin's books.
Great. The quote I love.
The other books that I use in my class are books, Freeman's books on The World is Flat, Hot, Flat, and Crowded, and Lexus and the Olive Tree. World from three perspectives. And one is the globalization and the impact of resources, hot, flat, and crowded, of course, climate change, population, and globalization. And Lexus and Olive Tree, the yin and yang between the technology societies versus the non-technology resistant societies, and what that means. But it's an honest look. Technology resistant societies, you're thinking of, they don't want to progress. But in many cases, when you sit down with them, they go, we don't want to progress because, your internet is 90% pornography. Why do I want to bring that into my culture? Well, there's some truth to that, of course, right?
On the other hand, you know, we can sell their products all over the world. You don't need to rely on anybody. You can set up a co-op, seller's co-op from Somalia, and sell your baskets into Arlington County, Virginia, here outside of Washington, no problem. You know, can do it all. So, you know, to figure out how do you balance the good with the bad, and there is always good with the bad, by the way, to do that. So Tom Freeman's books I use in my classes to illustrate that yin and yang and energy, and I think they're very insightful as well.
Excellent. The one quote I always loved from Amory was that the Stone Age didn't end because of a lack of rocks.
Right. 100% correct. 100% correct. The other thing I use, you're talking about, you know, good quotes, and when I do a lot of public speaking around the country, and when I speak to utilities and financial people, I start in saying, you know, I started as a kid with listening to music on long playing records. Then I went to 8-track tapes. Then I went to cassette tapes. Then I went to CDs. Then I went to DVDs. And now I'm on an MP3 player. The idea that energy technology is going to stagnate is nonsense, and goes right back to your Stones. You know, these technologies morph along with people. They evolve with people. And so technology stagnation is not possible. So all of you guys that don't want this solar revolution and wind revolution and geothermal and biomass and water energy and these smart sensors and controls and smart thermostats and energy efficiency stuff and batteries and compressed air, you know, you're crazy. It's going to happen. There's no way you can stop it. And so the issue is, how do you co-opt it and make money from it and, you know, put it together in a system? So, you know, that's it. Technology changes, and it's going to continue.
Right. If you had a magic wand and you can wave it and change one thing for everybody in the world, what would it be?
Well, I mean, the knee jerk that we need to burn something to generate electricity or heat. I mean, to me, it's like sort of nonsense, you know. And, you know, it was like, you know, and there was a time period of about 50 years, we sent people out to kill whales to get their oil to provide lighting in buildings. And that was the future. And there were people like Tom Edison, who was trying to do something that was not using whale oil, who was ridiculed, by the way, as being ridiculous. And it was more expensive than whale oil, but everybody loved it because you didn't have to do what third world does for diesel fuel. You don't have to pay bribes, and you didn't have to clean the oil lamps out, and you didn't have to worry about them falling over and catching fire, and you didn't have to worry about flickering light. And, you know, the stuff was better. And he said that. He said, you know, electric light wasn't the cheapest technology, it was the best technology. And he was correct, actually.
Absolutely.
So that's really what this is why create this pollution and smell and waste, and, you know, that affects our health and our lung. I mean, why do that? I mean, you don't have to. I mean, and it's actually more cost effective now not to. So that's the deal.
Cool. All right, this is one of my favorite parts of the show. So this is WTF or F. Weather time fudge or weather time fun. So you get to choose. Do you want to talk about an extreme personal weather experience and the impact on you, or a story about one of the most fun things you ever did in the type of year that it was in? So take your choice.
Well, I'm going to do both. I'm going to do, because I'm an interdisciplinary professor, I'm going to do both.
Okay.
So I live in Arlington, Virginia, which is 5 minutes from downtown DC, and it has lots of trees because we like tree canopy. But the problem is, when you have lots of trees, it knocks down wires during storms. So we have lots of outages. And so I was the first in my community in Northern Virginia, obviously, to have solar and batteries. Nobody had that. Remember, and I was doing it before net metering, 1985. I couldn't connect to the grid, give power to the grid, even if I wanted to. Back then, it was unheard of. So I have this, and actually, I'm going to step back one section. I'm running the Solar Industry Association at that time. And when I bought my house in 84, I didn't realize all these trees would happen. And they built all our houses on stream beds, and I'd have my basement flooded. So I'm sitting in there saying, maybe I can use solar panels to charge some batteries to keep my sump pumps going, to keep my basement dry. And they didn't sell sump pumps with batteries like they do now, even though they even only last 45 minutes. So I called Cindy and National Labs and said, hey, can you guys help design? And I'll get the industry to give me some panels and I'll do this. And they did, and it worked. And, that felt good. I'm thinking, well, now, outage number 3, I just don't want a dry basement. I like a little electronic ignition on my gas stove, and I like a little refrigeration and a couple of lights. How about that? So I did that. Well, that's like having opium, right? So then I went crazy, did the whole damn house. So when we have outages in my neighborhood and gets dark, people start knocking on my door, my neighbors. And they come in and drink my single malt scotch and my bourbon. And they just come in my house. And of course, I have air conditioning and lighting and whatever. And I always have a few neighbors that actually dislike solar. And I make them stand up every single time in front of all the other neighbors because they're in my house drinking my alcohol and saying, tell us why you hate solar. And they all go, oh, well, it's ugly, but it's pretty cool now. So that's what I do. I go through that. So the trauma of losing power, but at the same time, and having your neighbors mooch your alcohol, but having resilient energy is really wonderful.
That's great. All right. So what's the one thing you're most energized about today?
There's evolutions of new technology coming into play. I have about 3 or 4 I'm just going nuts over. First, the sensors, controls, and apps coming in to manage energy storage and electric power, and how to blend technologies in microgrids or net zero energy buildings is just fascinating. And it's coming out every 8 months with new evolutions of stuff. So that gives me excitement. And of course, I have to keep up with the technology and talk to the inventors and integrate them in the projects. We're in a material science renaissance, and that's why photovoltaics is getting less, and we can put wind turbines in the ocean that are salty and acidic and have animals that pit and is 700 times more dense than air and can last for 60 years. We didn't have materials that could do that before. Well, that now allows us to do marine technology, tidal and wave. Most people, by the way, live next to rivers or the shoreline. And to be able to tap that energy with devices that give 24-hour power without any emissions, and as far as I can tell, without any environmental degradation, is astounding. So I'm really very, very excited on the newer technologies coming out in marine and tidal, ocean, thermal ocean currents. And then there's another set of technologies on energy storage, aside from all the wonderful new battery materials and battery software. There's compressed air and liquids and use of weights, and of course pumped storage and flywheels, and even hydrogen is a storage medium. And to see what's coming out in all these various energy storage mediums, which are so important for the seamless grid we talked about earlier, is beyond fascinating. So exciting. So I think those are some of the things coming out, and there are several others beyond that. But I am thinking we're just scratching the surface, and we're going to see some wonderful evolution of technologies and controls and storage that will catapult the world into meeting our greenhouse gas requirements and reducing our regulated pollutants and giving us way more security than we have now.
Right. Well, we're almost at the end here. So if you would, give us a last piece of parting advice to everyday Americans out there. And if you'd like to share how people can get a hold of you, get a contact with you, that would be great.
Of course, sure. I'm going to put my professor hat now on. Is how my first computer, which had less memory than a cell phone, cost 30,000, had less memory than a flip phone had, which was nothing, had kilobytes, cost me about $30,000. But if people didn't pay for desktop or portable computers, we would never have the smartphones we're holding in our hand now. So the homework assignment from this professor, anybody's listening to this, is do something. Screw in some LED light bulbs. You know, step up and get a smart thermostat. Think about solar water heating. Think about a tiny solar system for your garage, for your garden shed. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be big. And I don't do residential solar, but my neighbors come all the time and say, do something small. You know, do something dedicated. Just get some power to run your refrigerator and your Wi-Fi and a couple of sockets and lights. So very small. So when there is an outage, you know, you can ride through it, and it takes it off the electric grid every single day. So you'll save money, and you don't have to go crazy and go, you know, 10 kilowatt systems or everything. You can do a 1.5 kilowatt, 2 kilowatt system. So, but do something. And it can be very small. It doesn't have to be big. It costs under $30. But just buy the technologies and step into it. And if you have kids or grandkids, talk to them about it too, because it's a legacy issue. And I have to say, for a lot of people who listen to this, our parents, the thing that made me happiest the most is when I was able to look at my daughter and know the work I'm doing is making this world a better place for her, and hopefully, if I ever get grandkids, for them too. And the point being is, you're giving something back. So your homework assignment is to give something back and get something moving in the right direction. Because if you do it, then other people will do it.
Thank you so much, Professor Sklar.
Thank you, my friend Ron, for having me on. May your beard grow long and bushy.